Have you noticed your computer taking forever to start? Maybe opening a web browser feels like waiting for paint to dry, or simply clicking the start menu comes with a long pause. Most people assume that's just what happens when a computer gets old. They start shopping for a replacement, convinced the hardware has reached the end of its life. But here's the surprising part. In many cases, the computer isn't the real problem. One small component hidden inside the machine is often responsible for almost all of that sluggish performance. Replace it, and a computer that felt ready for retirement can suddenly feel responsive again, without spending hundreds of dollars on a new system. That's exactly what we're covering today. Whether you're using a laptop, a desktop tower, or an all-in-one PC, the overall process is surprisingly similar. There are a few differences depending on the device, and I'll point those out along the way, but don't worry if you've never opened a computer before. This guide is built for beginners and explains each step in plain English. Before touching a screwdriver, though, there's one important question to answer. What type of storage drive is already inside your computer? That matters because not every slow computer has the same issue. Some systems already have modern storage, while others are still relying on older mechanical drives that become noticeably slower as the years pass. In the next step, we'll identify exactly what's installed in your computer, using tools already built into Windows. Once you know what you're working with, choosing the right upgrade becomes simple, and you'll avoid wasting money on parts you don't actually need. By the end of this guide, you'll know whether your computer is a great candidate for an upgrade and how to give it a much faster, smoother experience without replacing the entire machine. Now that you've confirmed your computer is a good candidate for an upgrade, don't rush to buy new hardware just yet. There's one step that matters more than everything else combined, and skipping it can turn a simple upgrade into a frustrating experience. Protect your files first. Think about what actually makes your computer valuable. It's not the screen, the keyboard, or even the processor. It's the photos you've collected over the years, the work documents you can't replace, the videos, downloads, passwords, and personal memories stored on that drive. Hardware can be replaced. Your data often can't. If your computer still starts normally, connect an external drive or a large USB flash drive and copy everything important before opening the case. Focus on your documents, pictures, videos, music, desktop, and downloads folders. If you use browser bookmarks or other important applications, make sure those are backed up as well. Once your files are safe, gather the tools you'll need. Fortunately, the list is short. A compatible SSD, a small screwdriver, and for many laptops, a plastic pry tool to help remove the bottom cover without damaging it. If you're working on a desktop, you may also need a simple mounting bracket if the new drive is smaller than the original one. Every computer opens a little differently, so don't guess. Search online for your exact model followed by the word disassembly. Chances are, someone has already recorded a step-by-step video showing precisely where every screw and hidden clip is located. Spending 5 minutes watching that guide can save you from accidentally breaking a plastic tab or disconnecting the wrong cable. With your data backed up, your tools ready, and your computer safely opened, you're finally prepared for the most satisfying part of the entire upgrade: removing the aging drive and installing the new SSD that will completely transform your computer's performance. With the computer open, you've reached the part that most first-time upgraders worry about. The good news is that replacing a storage drive is usually much easier than people expect. As long as you work carefully and stay organized, the process is straightforward. Start by locating the existing drive. In many laptops, it's secured by a small bracket or a few screws, while desktop computers often have the drive mounted inside a dedicated storage bay. Before removing anything, take a quick photo with your phone. It gives you a simple reference in case you need to remember how everything was connected. Once you're ready, disconnect the drive gently instead of pulling on it. Storage connectors are designed to slide in and out with very little force. If something feels stuck, stop and double check for an overlooked screw rather than forcing it. Now compare the old drive with the new SSD. You'll probably notice they're nearly identical in size and use the same SATA connectors. That's what makes this upgrade so convenient. The SSD simply takes the place of the old drive without requiring complicated adapters or special wiring in most systems. Secure the SSD using the same bracket or mounting hardware that held the original drive. Make sure it sits firmly in place and reconnect the cable until it's fully seated. A loose connection can prevent the computer from detecting the new drive, so it's worth taking an extra second to verify everything is aligned properly. Before reinstalling every screw and snapping the case completely shut, leave the cover loosely in place for the first startup. If something needs to be adjusted, you'll save yourself the trouble of taking the computer apart a second time. At this point, the hardware upgrade is complete. The next challenge isn't installing the drive. It's preparing that brand new SSD with a fresh copy of Windows so your computer is ready to use again. With the new SSD installed, it's time to bring the computer back to life. Since the drive is brand new, it's completely empty. That means the computer has nothing to boot from until Windows is installed. If you've already prepared a Windows installation USB drive, plug it into the computer before turning it on. As the system starts, enter the boot menu or BIOS using the appropriate key for your model. Common options include F12, ESC, F2, or Dell. Once the boot menu appears, select your USB drive instead of the internal SSD. Within a few moments, the Windows setup screen should appear. Follow the installation prompts until you reach the section that lists available storage devices. Your new SSD should appear as unallocated space. Select it, allow Windows Setup to create the required partitions automatically, and continue with the installation. The computer will restart several times during this process. That's completely normal, so don't interrupt it or remove the USB drive until Windows tells you to do so. After the installation finishes, you'll go through the initial setup screens, choosing your language, keyboard layout, and user account. Once you reach the Windows desktop, don't expect everything to be fully configured immediately. Windows will spend a little time detecting hardware, installing drivers, and downloading updates in the background. One of the first things you'll notice is the startup speed. Tasks that previously took several minutes, like booting into Windows or launching everyday applications, now happen in seconds. Even older computers often feel dramatically more responsive because the SSD can access data almost instantly compared to a traditional mechanical drive. At this stage, your computer has a clean operating system and much faster storage. The only thing left is restoring your personal files and making the new installation feel like home again. Now comes the part that makes the upgrade truly worthwhile, bringing your personal files back onto the computer. A fast system is great, but it doesn't feel like your computer until your documents, photos, and projects are right where you expect them. If you backed everything up to a USB flash drive or an external hard drive before starting, the process is simple. Connect the backup device, open File Explorer, and begin copying your files into the appropriate folders. Documents belong in the Documents folder, pictures in Pictures, videos in Videos, and so on. Keeping the same folder structure makes it much easier to find everything later. But what if your old computer wouldn't boot at all? Fortunately, that doesn't necessarily mean your files are gone. If the original hard drive is still readable, you can connect it to your upgraded computer using a USB to SATA adapter or an external drive enclosure. Windows will usually recognize it as a second drive, allowing you to browse its contents just like any other storage device. In some cases, Windows may tell you that you don't have permission to open certain folders. That's normal because those files were originally tied to the user account on the old installation. Taking ownership of the folders through Windows security settings usually restores access, although it may take a few minutes if there are a lot of files. Once you can open the old drive, copy only the personal data you actually need. Avoid moving old system folders or Windows files, since those belong to the previous installation and can create unnecessary clutter. After confirming that every important file has been transferred successfully, spend a little time reinstalling your favorite applications and signing back into the services you use every day. Before long, your upgraded computer will feel familiar again, only much faster, quieter, and far more enjoyable to use. At this point, your upgrade is essentially complete. But this final stage is where everything comes together and you make sure the system is stable, clean, and ready for everyday use. The first thing you should do is run Windows Update. Even a fresh installation of Windows is usually missing important patches, drivers, and security updates. Let it download everything in the background while you test basic performance, like opening apps, browsing the web, and checking system responsiveness. Next, pay attention to startup behavior. One of the hidden advantages of switching to an SSD is how quickly the system boots and how little strain it puts on the computer during startup. You should notice that even older hardware feels significantly more responsive because the storage bottleneck has been removed. Once updates are finished, reinstall only the software you actually need. This is a good opportunity to avoid clutter. Many slow computers aren't just slowed down by old hardware, they're weighed down by unnecessary programs running in the background. A clean installation gives you a chance to start fresh. If you still have your old drive connected, don't rush to erase it. Keep it untouched until you are 100% confident that all your important files have been safely transferred. After that, you can repurpose it as extra storage or keep it as a backup archive. Finally, take a moment to appreciate the difference. A simple storage upgrade has likely given your computer a second life. In many cases, systems that once felt outdated can now handle everyday tasks comfortably again without lag or frustration. And that's really the key takeaway here. You don't always need a new computer to get new performance. Sometimes, a smart, affordable upgrade is all it takes to completely change how your system feels and performs. If you followed along and completed the process, your machine should now feel noticeably faster, cleaner, and more efficient than before.
It's not a game, it's a rich thing.